You know, these are very exciting days at the Compass Church. God is just blessing us in a number of ways. And if you're not aware, I want to make you aware of just some of the great excitement we're all enjoying. Let me start with Easter last weekend. We had just a fantastic, victorious Easter at all four of our campuses. In fact, we had the highest attendance in our church's history with over 6,500 people attending Easter. And I share numbers, we can clap for that. I share numbers with you hoping for your joy, not because numbers in themselves are wonderful, but it's remembering that every number represents a name, and every name represents a story of somebody who is in some place in their journey of being transformed by Jesus Christ. Every one of those people, God is going after. Some of them are resisting, and some of them are cooperating, and some of them are running with the Lord. And I like to try to imagine, though with 6,500, it's hard to imagine, but thinking of all of you at our 95th Street campus and our Bolingbrook campus and Wheaton campus and Hobson, to think of all the people, many guests who are in for the first time, that God's at work in them. And we just pray with heart-pounding excitement that God would win the day in each one of them. It's a fun thing to be a part of God's army called the local church. And not only was Easter a victory, but I also want to tell you that property-wise, we've had a tremendous victory. In fact, everybody at 95th already celebrated this. And that is that a little over a week ago, we finalized the purchase of 8 acres at the corner of 103rd and 59. So the property is ours now. We'll praise God for that one as well. In fact, my buddy Andy's got a drone, and he flew it over the property. This is Route 59 going south. Maybe you know that pedestrian bridge. And then there's the property right here. All of this is already under construction. Pulte's building 312 homes right here. But that corner is where the church is going to be soon, Lord willing. Do we got another angle? Here's looking. This is the corner itself. And may God use this land long after you and I are gone to advance his cause. That's one of the exciting things about these wins is that, God just has such a long-range plan. Think about it, for so many, we sit in facilities and are blessed to worship and grow in places that someone long ago bought the land. People long ago built the building, and we're benefiting from their generosity. And may God use us in this coming season to greatly bless not only the people at the 95th Street campus, but at our church at large and for generations to come. I'm referring to them all as the 95th Street campus. Did it dawn on you that's not going to work anymore as a name? And so they know this already, but there's been a process by which we're trying to discern the best new name for that campus. And though it may lack creativity, it's strong in clarity. And we have arrived at a new name. It is now called the South Naperville campus. And so, hey, everybody at the South Naperville campus. In fact, it's official right now, all right? So when we pray for you, when we pray for everybody there, if we pray 95th, the Lord will know what we're talking about. So we got to get our language right. South Naperville campus, so exciting. You should know that we've got an architect hired and working already in the design of the building. We've got a builder hired and in place. God, just so blessed. One of the premier builders of churches in Chicagoland happens to, the owner of the company goes to our church, wouldn't you know? And so we are so blessed and excited to see that building get built. You should also be aware, and you can start praying about this, that in the fall, we're going to have a church-wide capital campaign where we raise money not only for the South Naperville campus, but also for a number of projects here and far away. And maybe you haven't been in a capital campaign before. They are an exciting time where not only are monies to advance God's cause raised, but hearts are raised in their devotion to Jesus, their passion for his kingdom. And so be in prayer for this fall as the planning is already underway as we get ready for that capital campaign. Exciting days at the Compass Church. May God continue to use ordinary people in extraordinary ways to advance his eternal cause. We're in a series called Fearless. Easter was week 1. This is week 2, and we're going to specifically zoom in on the fear of failure. I said at the Easter service last week that I deal with a lot of fears. I said that I deal with the fear of heights. Some of you are calling me liar, saying if you can get up on that beam, you have no fear of heights. Well, just to make the point, I want to show you a little video that got cut from the cliff thing, all right? Yep. Oh, those grunts are embarrassing.
You give me a clap too, and then whenever.
Oh, see? I am terrified. It's very evident by the guttural noises I was making there, huh? It's one of the reasons this series has captured my heart is because this topic of fear has been really, really a big deal in my life. And this specific fear of the fear of failure, a really big deal in my life. In a silly sort of way, it was illustrated when I recently went to get my renewed driver's license. I went down to the Secretary of State facility there, and the lady said, "Mr. Griffin, do you want to renew your motorcycle classification on your license?" I haven't owned a motorcycle for 15 years, but I feel this little remnant of being cool that my license at least says I once did. And so I'm like, yeah, motorcycle, yeah, I want to do that. And she said, well, that would require you taking a written motorcycle test. And I'm like, well, why? And she's like, oh, it has to, every once in a while, be done. And I'm like, oh, give me the test. And so she gave me the test. I sat down at this desk. My heart is beating. It dawned on me, I haven't taken a test in so long. And I'm like, I hope I don't fail. And as I start going through, I'm realizing, hey, I don't know that. I'm going to guess. And I'm like, this isn't good. And I started sweaty palms, went up and gave her my test. And she scored it quickly. And she said, sorry, Mr. Griffin, you failed. She said it way louder than she needed to. I mean, the place was so full. And I'm like, what are you doing, Oh, the painful humiliation of that moment. And I'm like, what do I do now? And she said, well, I can issue you a driver's license without the motorcycle classification, or you can try to retake it. And she told me that there was a rules of the road for motorcycles book. I could study it and see if I could do any better. And I came this close to just saying, you know what, I don't own a motorcycle. I don't plan to. Just forget it, get rid of it. But this stubborn side of me says, I'll take it again. What I thought was, I'm going to study this, and she'll give me the same test again, and I'll just remember what they have multiple tests. Warning, because after my studying and my second test, I find myself guessing nearly as much as I did the first time. And I'm like, oh boy, the only thing worse than a failure is a repeat failure, And I went up to her, gave her the new one, and I see her wrong. She says, you just passed by one question. I'm like, phew. But I'm so glad I did it because a couple of weeks ago I was visiting a friend who got a new motorcycle. He said, Jeff, would you like to take your son for a ride on my motorcycle? He said, oh, wait, do you have motorcycle classification on your? As a matter of fact, I do. And whipped it out and was very proud. Well, in fact, here's a picture of Jake and I on the motorcycle. I went up 2 notches in my son's eyes by taking him for a ride on that bike. So I came this close to deterring my plan due to a fear of failure. And I'm glad in this case, not that it's the end of the world to lose that, but I'm glad I didn't let the fear of failure keep me from going that route. Friends, in bigger, more significant ways, the fear of failure alters the path of many, many people. And we need to learn how to stop that from happening. And we're going to do so from a hero, a woman who is just an extraordinary, courageous follower of the Lord. Found in the Old Testament, her name is Esther. Some of you are smiling, you know, and you love Esther's story. For those of you who aren't as familiar, let me just orient you to what's going on. This is the Old Testament. This is like 500 BC, so a long time ago. It's the time of the Persian Empire. This was a period in world history where there was a succession of empires who ruled the whole Mediterranean world. At first it was the Assyrians, and then they were conquered by the Babylonians, and then the Persians defeated the Babylonians. And it's the emperor by the name of Xerxes that's on the throne in this day. Xerxes wants to marry a hottie. In fact, he had a beauty contest so that his wife could be declared to be the most beautiful woman in his entire empire. And this beauty contest was conducted. And wouldn't you know, a woman by the name of Esther, a Jew, won it all and became the queen of the most powerful man in the world, the wife of Xerxes. Is what Esther found herself in. Now, her adoptive father, Mordecai, advised her not to let her husband nor anyone know that she was Jewish. He said, listen, we Jews are not viewed favorably in these days. There was anti-Semitism going on then. And so Esther did just that. She hid her nationality vigilantly. And Xerxes had no idea that his beautiful bride was, in fact, a Jew. And then things got really ugly when there was a high-ranking official in Xerxes' cabinet who hated Jewish people with a vehement passion. And he decided he was going to advocate for their extermination. He came to Xerxes and he said, there were so many people groups in the Persian Empire that it's quite possibly he knew very little about the Jews. And this Haman was his name. Haman came to Xerxes and said, you may not know much about the Jewish people, but I'm telling you, they threaten your throne and the very stability of the Persian Empire, and you would be wise to set a law in place that would result in them being all executed. And Xerxes was like, all right, if you think you know better, I put you in charge. Set a date. Make it a law. If you think it's best, let's kill them all. And suddenly, Esther's very people are threatened with extermination. It's a horrible situation. Well, Mordecai, her adoptive father, sends a message saying, listen, I know I told you to be quiet that you were a Jew before. Now I'm changing my tune. You've got to save the day. You got to let it be known that you are one of these people. Here it's found in Esther chapter 4, verse 8. He's sending her a message. He doesn't have access to his daughter anymore. She's in the palace and he is not. But he sends a message. He says, instruct her to go into the king's presence to beg for mercy and plead with him for her people. Esther freaks out at this assignment. She sends a message back to her dad. Verse 11, she says, all the king's officials know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that they be put to death. She knows her husband, and he is a violent, angry man. In fact, he so guards his honor and his privacy that he's established this law, and he's used it before. Anybody who comes in without me asking, I'm going to kill you. That's it. That's the law. And Esther's like, you don't know what you're asking me to do, Dad. You're going to lead to my death. She goes on to say, all right, there's a slight possibility of success. She continues in verse 11. She says, unless, that is, the king extends the gold scepter to that person and spares their lives. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king. She acknowledges that there's a law in place, that it's at least theoretically possible that though they're violating the law, the king might extend the golden scepter as his means of saying, listen, I should kill you for what you're doing right now. But I'm having a good day, I'm in a good mood, and I've decided to spare your life. That could happen. But Esther's saying, I don't think it's likely. And she goes on to be very vulnerable. Look at this phrase, but 30 days have passed since I was called to the king. She's saying, Dad, I know you think I'm all that in his eyes. And admittedly, I was when I got married. He was so into me. I was the apple of his eye. But Dad, that's long past. The truth is, Xerxes had a harem of women, probably multiple wives. And Esther's acknowledging the poor state of her marriage. She's like, he's moved on. She says, you think I have so much sway in his life? She goes, know this. Here's the truth. Though we live in the same house, I haven't even seen my husband in a month. She's confessing the broken state of her marriage and the lack of confidence she has that she can be victorious in this assignment. She's like, hey, listen, I'm a overlooked beauty queen champion. He's moved on. If you think I can shift into politician mode, barge into his office, persuade him that a rule he created was folly and that he should change, that's just not going to work. I'm not a politician. I'm a forgotten wife. It's going to be a disaster. What is she fearing? Failure. She said, I'm seeing the importance of the moment, but I'm telling you, I fear I would fail big time. And you and I can relate. This fear of failure is not something unique to Esther. It's in all of us. Let's talk about it for a little bit. All right, I'm going to get real vulnerable here. And maybe you even had thoughts of this when I was announcing all that we're going to accomplish on the South Naperville campus. I've gone from moments of great faith and confidence to moments of fear of failure. I announced we're going to do a capital campaign and raise millions of dollars. Capital campaigns have failed. And there's a side of me that's like, oh man, Jeff, why are you rocking the boat? The Compass Church is doing so great. Just keep everything the same. You don't want to do any bold initiative that could risk a failure. Just don't make waves. These thoughts have come into my mind. And not only could a capital campaign fail, construction could fail. Construction is complex, and there's so many things that could go wrong. If you know anything about construction, failure is commonplace there. We could fail there. Or even after it's built, we've set this expectation that this is so important, it deserves millions of dollars because we're going to reach thousands of people. What if this whole expectation of this facility leading to great impact, what if we fail at making that work out? You're like, man, you deal with a lot of fear, Jeff. Yep, I do. And maybe you do too. But don't let the fear of failure deter you from the path God has set before us. And when you feel God calling, you just got to go. Maybe for you, it's like not that kind of thing. Maybe for you, it's, we have students and it's school. You got exams and you're like, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to fail. Or maybe you're applying to a college and in the very, attempt to get in, you could be denied and have to deal with that. Yeah, I applied to that school, loser. I didn't get in. Or maybe it's a career path you're contemplating and you're like, oh, if I go that route, though, I could fail. Or maybe it's marriage. You're contemplating getting married, or you're in marriage and you're setting a vision of building a strong, healthy marriage, and you see the failure rate of marriages in today's world, and you're like, I fear I'm going to fail. Or maybe it's raising children or discipling grandchildren, and you see how difficult it is with young folks, and you're just like, oh, it makes me think I'm not going to mess them up. Do I think I can raise perfect, godly, mature kids? I don't know. I may fail. Please tell me I'm not the only one, huh? Or maybe it's, ministry. Maybe God's calling you to serve in a new ministry, and you're just like, I don't know if I could do that. I don't want to be that person that tries and then has to be asked to kindly find my calling elsewhere. I don't want that. Or maybe it's evangelism. You're all fired up about being God's representative to people far from God, and you want to love on them, build friendships, share your story of what God's doing, invite them to church. And you're like, what if that just is all, rebuffed and it ends in failure? We don't like to fail. This is a very real thing, not only for Esther, but for us. Esther got over it. We can too. Let's find out how she did it, shall we? So she's been really vulnerable with her father. Hey, listen, I don't think I can do what you're asking me to do. I think I'll fail. And for me, failure means. Well, her dad, Mordecai, sends back this message in verse 13. Esther, do not think that because you are in the king's house, that you alone of all the Jews will escape. Boy, these are some hard words. And he doesn't want to think of her demise. He loves her more than life itself. But he's saying, Mordecai, if the fear of failure at this moment leads you to hide the fact that you're a Jew and hide in your palace, if you think that all the other Jews are going to get killed and somehow you're going to be able to maintain that secret, he goes, it's not going to work that way. He goes, your true identity is going to be found out, and you will end up facing the same fate. One thing he's saying is like, listen, as you face this difficult decision, you could die if you rise up. You could die if you don't. In other words, the decision to hide, to avoid risk for the sake of keeping you from the fear of failure, he goes, it's a bad decision, darling. It doesn't work in this world. Fear and failure, they're inevitable. There's no hiding from them. So rather than your plan being, I'm just going to avoid scary risk, how about you step into risk and learn how to face failure and, in fact, learn how to fail well at times. That's the goal. If your plan is, well, then I'm just going to hide in a cocoon and never do anything risky so I don't fail. No. In this world, you can't avoid failure. Learn how to do it well instead. Okay, so there's the first lesson we've learned. Mordecai continues, though, in verse 14. He says to her, darling, if you remain silent at this time, if you chicken out, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But you and your father's family will perish. Mordecai's a Bible student, and he has concluded from his study of Scripture that God has promised to sustain the Jewish people. They're not going to get exterminated. This Haman is the guy who's behind this plan to kill them all. Mordecai goes, it's going to fail. I know God's word, and he said they're going to make it. And so Mordecai says, Esther, the way I see it is this. Either you obey and you're God's hero, used by him to courageously save the day, or if you chicken out, God will find plan B. He'll find somebody else. And so really, Esther, it's about you stepping into God's glorious plan or you missing out on God's glorious plan. And that's the same with us. Did you ever think about that? God has a plan. God is not done with any one of us. And in the days ahead, he wants to use us to impact others and bless this world. And yet, if for the fear of failure we step back, that's our loss. We will have allowed that fear to rob us from God's glorious plan for our lives. And he's saying to Esther, darling, don't miss out. Don't let someone else end up in the role that you were supposed to have. And we need to realize the same could be true in our story. Continues. Oh, you're going to love this. Verse 14 continues. Mordecai says, and who knows but that you have come to this royal position for such a time as this. For such a time as this. Isn't that a great? Mordecai's looking at his daughter's story. And he doesn't say this, but I think he's speculating. I used to just think, I'm so glad my daughter won the beauty contest. Now she's living a glorious life in the palace. How lucky for her. And he's saying, I'm starting to think that this is all God's plan. That providence, God has been working behind the scenes, and that he's the one who has brought you to this position of influence for this very moment. I think this is God's plan for you, is what he's saying. Friends, this is so important. When it comes to the fear of failure, we must discern what God's plan is. Lord, what do you want me to do? If you want me to do this, I'll charge forward and face the risk of failure. Mordecai is like, I'm discerning the circumstances of your life. I'm saying, wait a minute, why is it that you ended up where you did? Maybe this is all pointing to God wanting to use you in this way at this time. Mordecai's not only looking at circumstances, He's also looking at the Bible, as I mentioned already. He's knowing of God's plan to sustain the Jews and saying, you stepping into this moment fits with the biblical principles I've read. We see here is when it comes to trying to discern if God wants me to do this, we see the value of wise wisdom. Esther is being blessed with wise counsel from a trusted, godly father. We see prayer. We'll see that in a moment. Esther also prays. These are some of the ways we can discern what God wants. Well, when you look at, a moment and you say, Lord, are you calling me to step into this and risk failure? You can say, Lord, I'm looking at the circumstances that are seeming to point that way. I'm looking to the Bible. I'm seeking wise counsel. I'm going to pray about it and ask for your Spirit to lead me. But that's the key. Does God want you to do this? And if he does, charge forward. Risk failure. Reckless. Some people get into this fearless thing and they're like, I love fearlessness and I'm going to say yes to every crazy, chance of failure. I love failing. Woo! No. That's recklessness. That's folly. You shouldn't say yes to everything and charge around like a crazy person. You should be discerning the will of God and saying, Lord, do you want me? If you don't want me to do this, I'm not going to do it. But if I sense you're calling me to do this scary thing, I'll risk failure and obey you. Now, some are like, do you ever know 100% God's calling you to do something? And I have to say, no, I don't think you do. There's always a sense of, I think God's calling me to do this. I see that in this verse. Remember what Mordecai says? And who knows? Or if perhaps God has brought you to this position for this very moment. Mordecai's realizing, I'm not certain, but I think this is what God is up to. And friends, that's just the reality of how we live. Sometimes we have a high degree of certainty that God's calling. Other times it's not as high. But to the best of our ability to discern, we think this is God's will. I kind of felt that way. I remember when we had the opportunity to adopt Jake. Suddenly my wife and I get this phone call. You want to adopt a kid? It's a high-risk pregnancy. This could be challenging. And Jen and I were forced to our knees just going, oh my. Seeking counsel from wise people, prayerfully discussing it, looking at the circumstances, saying, is this coincidental that we got this call at this very moment? Or is this you, God? Woo. And we got to a place where we said, well, you can never be 100% certain. But we think God's calling us this way, and so we're going to step forward in obedience. Can I just make a point here? And this is my assumption here, but I think I'm right. I believe that even if you get that wrong, God's still going to bless it. God sees your heart and your discernment process where you're trying to submit your life to him, say, Lord, speak. Tell me what you want. And even if God's like, I wasn't leading you to do that. God says, I see you desired to follow me and you really are doing this because you believe it's my will. God says, I am so delighted with your humble, obedient posture. I'm going to bless this plan, even though I wasn't the one nudging you to do it. And so, friends, the important thing is, are we submitting to God and seeking his will? He will bless that humble, obedient posture. All right. So, he says, I think I see God's providence in this. I think this is God's will for you. Look how Esther responds in verse 15. Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. Go, Dad, go gather all the Jews who are in Susa, that's the town, the city that they're in, and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. And I and my attendants, we will fast as you do. So she asks for this corporate prayer. Fasting was how they went about going without food for the purpose of focused prayer. And so Esther is like, listen, if we're going to risk everything here, we need to pray for God and his help. One reason people fail is for lack of prayer. Do you know that? Sometimes people fail because they charge forward and they never look to God for help. They're like, I got this. And the Lord's like, no, you don't. God says, I'm going to make you fail just to prove you shouldn't run around confident in self. And Esther's like, hey, listen, if I fail, I don't want it to be because I didn't look to God for help. And so let's take that out of the equation. Let's bow now and cry out to God. Not only me and my friends here in the palace, but Dad, you and everybody you can get praying. Let's cry out to God and see what he does. And so the prayer goes out. And then look at this verse. Oh, this is my favorite. Esther decides, I will go to the king, even though it's against the law. And look at these words. And if I perish, I perish. And if I could translate that into our language here, and if I fail, I fail. Esther has decided that I think God's calling me to do this thing. And you know what? If I perish, I perish. There's something worse than failing, and that's disobeying God. Esther's like, I would rather obey and fail than fail to obey. And friends, that's so brilliant of this woman. She's realized that failure is not the end of the world. It may be the end of her earthly life, but it is not going to end her existence. She's going to press on into heaven with the Lord. And if she disobeyed, that's really what's at hand. So many people think God wants us to succeed. No, he wants us to obey. And if you obey courageously what you believe God's calling you to do, and it results in failure, God is still honored by that obedience. And if you are successful in things that he never called you to think that that's going to thrill him, God does not want your success. He wants your obedience. And so Esther says, you know what? If I fail, I fail. If I perish, I perish. Let's do it. And you should know I don't have time to study it with you, but she wins. She saves the day. She goes to the king. She defends her people. And it's a profound story that I would encourage you to read in your own time. But God uses her bold obedience to save the Jewish people in this hour of peril. And I would just challenge you to look at those words. You know what? If I fail, I fail. I'm going to obey God and let things work out as they do. Obedience is what's most important. This willingness to fail is so central to my own career path. Can I show you? I've worked for 4 churches. I've been a pastor at 4 churches, and here they are. This first one goes back to when I was actually in my final years of college. I started as a youth pastor at Oakdale Community Church. It was a church plant. This group of folks came to me and said, hey, Jeff, we're thinking of starting a church, and we really would love you to be a part of it. They explained to me, we got no money, and we got no people, and we got no facilities. And I'm like, oh, what kind of a church is this, And they're like, it's a startup venture, which are inherently risky. And I remember discerning, God, is this you? Lord, I want to go to the church you're calling me to. I want to serve where you... And to the best I could tell, God was calling me to Oakdale Community Church. And there were some great moments and some fun wins for God's kingdom, but ultimately, it failed. We were in Carroll Stream. If you go look for Oakdale Community Church in Carroll Stream, you won't find it because it no longer exists. We had to shut it down. It just failed. And man, was that hard. And now I'm like, Lord, did I get your will wrong? Was I not supposed to be a part of that? Are you embarrassed that I went that route? And I believe whether I was following God or not, I think I was, but I don't know. We'll find out when I get there. God was smiling and delighting in my obedience, even though it ended in failure, ultimately. Well, just shows you what a knucklehead I am. I had another group come to me and say, hey, we're wanting to start a church up in Lake Zurich called Lake Point Community Church. Church plant. Jeff, do you know about them? I'm like, yeah, I know a little thing about them. And they're like, would you be a part of it? And I discerned God was saying yes. And so I'm like, let's do this thing. And I didn't let my experience of failure stop me from risking it again. And we failed again. If you go to Lake Zurich looking for Lake Point Community Church, it does not exist. It shriveled up and we had to shut it down. 3rd time, I'm talking to a buddy of mine. He goes, hey, I got an idea. What if we did a church plant, started a church from scratch? And you would think that with 2 failures, I would be so paranoid of failure at this point that I'd be like, no way. Instead, you know what? I was like, hey, you know what? If we fail, we fail. If we perish, we perish. I'm getting pretty good at failure about now, and so let's give it a go. And that was the chapel. And I was there for 20 years. And I am so glad that the fear of failure did not stop me from continuing to follow the Lord, because the chapel became a church of 8 campuses. It's still thriving, and God is changing so many lives there, and I'm so grateful that I followed. This fear of failure, though, even applies to my time and my transition here to the Compass Church 5 years ago, actually, this week. Friends, the fear of failure was very real as I felt God's call to this church. And you say, why? You came from a successful church. Yeah, here I was the co-senior pastor, which is a very different role. All of my weaknesses, could be compensated by my co-pastor who was strong in those areas. And so as I looked in stepping into the role of solo senior pastor, this thought was very real in my head. Jeff, you could... Good group of people, a good church, you could fail in a blaze of glory. You got it so good here. Why would you contemplate stepping out of that and risking everything? Here's why. I think God's leading me. And now, 5 years into it and loving all of you and what God's doing, I am so glad that the fear of failure did not keep me where I was at, but that I had the God-given courage, faith to charge. What is God calling you to? Friends, presently or in the days ahead, God wants to use you in exciting ways. But you're going to fear failure. The question is, will the fear of failure keep you from obedience? Better to fail, to obey and fail than fail to obey. Would you pray with me? Lord, we are so grateful for Esther, so grateful for her courage. We want to follow like she did. We want to do our best to discern your will and charge forward. And you know what? If we fail, we fail. We want to obey. We know that that's what you long for. So give us the faith, the courage to do just that. And God, my prayer is that when we arrive in heaven in a little bit, we'll have fallen quite a bit. Maybe we'll arrive with bloody knees and bruised elbows, but obedient hearts. That's what we want. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.